Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mondays with Moishi. It is now just after 9 o'clock on October 27th, 2025. We're just about 5.5 years into Mondays with Moishi show. And tonight we're doing something a little different. A little different. I finally allowed myself my guard down a little bit to invite Gitty Greenwald, who's a licensed clinical social worker in Brooklyn, to discuss the process of breath work. Now, I must make a disclaimer that probably about a year or so ago, I had Judith Kravitz on. She knows a bit or two about breath work, and I don't think that the recording of that session is out there for the public. So here we will get to have another experience of the process of breath work from somebody who is highly, highly passionate, highly, highly successful in facilitating breathwork sessions, training breathwork facilitators. We have both clinicians and groupies on the call tonight. I see people who have actually trained under Gitty are on the call tonight. And I just want to say, and Gitty, you're going to have to explain this to me. The feedback that I got when posting that I'm having you on tonight and that we're discussing breathwork was breathtaking. So people, really were excited, and the feedback was, "Oh my gosh, I've attended the trainings. They're incredible. It's incredible. It kicks psychedelics. There's all kinds of cool responses." So you have to tell me, and you have to tell us, what is it about breath work and about your trainings and about this whole process that's so fascinating and so incredible? Or should we wait till after we learn about it to understand? So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me here. And thanks for joining the movement. Yeah, it's been quite some movement. So for those of you who have never met me, I do see some of my trainees here, and thank you for coming on. So good to see you here. Welcome, welcome. Yeah. So just a little bit about myself first. So my name is Gitty Greenwald, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm in private practice in Brooklyn. I'm a somatic therapist. I'm a body-centered therapist. My main focus is on trauma. So I work a lot with clients who've been through a lot of trauma on many different levels. And I want to put a disclaimer out there that if anyone is a skeptic about breath work, then you can't be a bigger skeptic than I was. Because, that's the humor in all of this, is that I really did not believe in breath work. And I thought breath work was ridiculous. I thought it was dangerous. I thought it was not safe and too strong, too fast, too soon. And I actually had some clients who came in after breathwork sessions and they were so traumatized that I knew that I was never going to do breathwork. So I just want to give you a little heads up on that. And I'm going to tell you how I got into it. So I'm very cautious and I'm a very, everything needs to make sense to me. Like I don't just like say, oh, trust in the breath and the breath will take you where you need to go. I can't say that lightly. So at one point, a couple of years back, because I'm a somatic therapist and because I work so much body centered, I have a lot of training in different body centered approaches, which is not only somatic therapy, I dabble in energy healing and in body work and different kind of things that I've trained in. So I went for a training to Mexico. It was one of my teachers was coming in from Switzerland to Mexico, and I really wanted to take his training. So I traveled to Mexico to do his training. And while I was there, I really, um, I'm going to say this. When I got there, I understood why God brought me there because the training that I went for, I didn't really appreciate. And I didn't really learn much. But at that training, I met this wonderful guy. His name was Eric. And he says to me, you need to try breath work. And I said, nah, I'm not doing breath work. And he says, you need to try breath work. He said, yeah, but I don't believe in that stuff. I'm a somatic therapist. I work in titration. I work slowly. I work carefully. I don't do that to people to take their nervous system completely out of whack like that. I don't do that kind of stuff. And he's like, he got on my case and he's like, you got to try breath work. So finally I said to him, you know what? If you find me a good facilitator here in Mexico, I'm going to try it just so that I can know what breath work is and so that I can understand my clients when they come in and talk about it. Because I have this thing that I just use myself as the experiment. So I said, I'll try it. So sure enough, he got someone for me, and I was there in the woods in a shack in Mexico, middle of the night, and we're doing a breathwork session, a private session. And I really wanted to hate it. I really did not want to like breathwork because I was so convinced that it's not okay. And what can I tell you? It blew my mind. It blew my mind. I came out of the session and I looked at her and I said, did you give me something? Did you put something in my drink? I felt I had such a powerful psychedelic experience like I've never had in my life. And things that I've been struggling. Now, by the time I came to that breathwork session, I was like a very experienced, therapized client. I've done so much therapy on so many different levels in so many different ways. And there in one session, it was like years of therapy came together and like a bam, it was so strong and so powerful. And I was like, wow. And I was like sizzling for the next 2 days. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to learn this stuff. I need to bring this to my clients. I need to find a way to do this. Like it was just mind-boggling. I was also angry. I was like, why didn't I know about this before? Like I went through so much therapy and I spoke to so many people. Like nobody can take me to a place where I can go so deep inside, connect to myself in such a deep and meaningful level to get so much clarity and healing in one session. It was just beyond. So sure enough, I came home and 3 months later I was in Colorado. I went to take a training. I flew down to Colorado to do a training there. And it was a nice training. It was an interesting training, but it was not enough because there was a beautiful group there of, I think, 24 people we were there. And only myself and my friend, who I took along because she's my partner in crime, I took her along with me. We were the only two therapists in the room. Everyone else was just lay people, people who wanted to learn about breath work and they wanted to go out there and be breathwork facilitators, which is nice, which is wonderful. We should have more healers out there. But I didn't feel that the training was comprehensive enough and safe enough for me to bring this to my clients. It wasn't clinical. It wasn't trauma informed. It wasn't safe. And I said, okay, I'm a therapist and I'm an experienced therapy client, so I can tolerate this. But if I brought this to my clients in this way, I'm going to hurt them. But I still really believed in this process. So I came home and I started doing a ton of research. And I took multiple trainings and different modalities so that I can kind of get a sense of how can we create something out of this that's safe, effective, and clinical and ethical and legal. So I started doing a lot of research. I also included a lot of what I already knew around somatic therapy and energy healing and body work. And I created this process that I figured, great, I'm going to use this for my clients. And it worked really well. And it helped clients really move in very deep and meaningful ways. And if you'd like, I can give you examples later about that. So then we had some very courageous therapists in our community that heard about the fact that I was doing breath work, and they said, Gitty, we want to come in as a group and we want to do this with you. I said, come, let's do this. So we formed a little private group, a closed group, and they would come to my office once a month. For almost a year, we did that. And we just did breath work together. And it was beautiful. And then Nefesh heard about it and they said, why don't you come present at Nefesh? And I said, are you kidding me? I'm not presenting at Nefesh. I was like, this is very out of the box kind of thing. But then, sure enough, the universe wanted me there. And I landed at Nefesh Conference and I presented at the Nefesh Conference. That's the Nefesh International Conference. And it was mind blowing. The feedback was just so powerful and so amazing. People started messaging me and saying, Kitty, I want you to train me how to do this. I need to learn how to do this. This is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not a trainer. I've been a teacher for close to 20 years, a school teacher before I became a therapist. But I'm like, I'm not a trainer. Come on. And they were just like really going at me. And I said, you know what? Fine. I'll do one training. I'll train whoever's interested and I'll just get you all out there doing this work. So that's what we did. A bunch of wonderful, courageous therapists who kind of were ready to join me on this bandwagon of experimentation because it was like I was really experimenting with them. I was creating something with them together. And that training was so profound, so powerful. I was moved to tears every day by the amazing, incredible shifts. And what we realized was that it wasn't just a training, it was a retreat. It was an experience where therapists got together and really allowed themselves to open up and connect in the most beautiful, vulnerable, authentic way. We did a lot of breathing together, a lot of learning together. Everyone walked into the training stiff, like a therapist. You know how we go to trainings and we walk in and we're all like, I'm here to learn about trauma, but I don't do trauma. I just want to help my clients do trauma. And we're all like holding it together. That's how everyone walked in on the first day. And I said, okay, listen here, we're going to do this and we're going to do this real. If we cannot be open and authentic with each other, how can we expect our clients to be open and authentic with us? And we kind of like contracted on that. It was like a silent contract. By the time we finished the last day of the training, everyone was just hugging each other and just holding each other. And it was just sacred. That was the word everyone said. This is sacred. And really, it is sacred. And from there, this training was kind of created because people heard about it and they wanted it. And I'm like, okay, as long as you want it, I'm here to give it to you. And it's really evolved. At this point, I actually sat down with a lawyer to discuss how to do this ethically so that we can do it legally with the right consents, with the right information. So I adjusted it for that as well. And it turned into this beautiful retreat style training, which when you come to a training like this, you know that you are going to be personally transformed. This is going to be incredibly healing for you as a therapist. You're going to open up in ways that you never thought was possible. And then you can bring that to your clients as well. And when our clients feel and know that we are open, it's miraculous. They go right in. They're right there with us. And the feedback I'm getting, I don't like to um, speak for this because, here I am, the trainer, talking like that, but the feedback I'm getting from therapists is just, it moves me every time. It just brings me to tears. The
So,
messages
Gizzy,
I get.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about when you talk about a transformative experience and when you talk about how profound it is? You're using those words that are sort of the end result words. But what do you mean when you say it's transformative? And what do you mean when you say it's healing? And what do you mean that people are changed? Give us a little bit more. And I'd also love to hear from some of you who've been to some of these trainings, what you've experienced. So tell me a little bit about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. So because I'm a realist, really, I'm seriously very realistic in my life. I don't believe in magic and I don't believe in like, oh my gosh, this is going to change your life forever and this is magical. I don't, I'm too realistic for that. Yet, with all that, I believe that breath work is magical. It just is. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So the process of breath work, what is the process of breath work, right? When we breathe intentionally in the way that we train you to breathe, right? We very systematically take people into their subconscious minds. We're taking them into a space of which is like a psychedelic space where they're in touch with their subconscious, which is their trauma, their memories. But because of the way we do this breath work and because of the way we do it with the safety and all the parts involved, after about 7 to 10 minutes of breathing, the person goes into a state of transient hypofrontality where their thinking mind shuts down and they have access to their subconscious mind in a safe and effective way. So people have access to thoughts, feelings, memories, things that were stored in their body that otherwise they can't access or it's too frightening to go there. And when you're in that space, first of all, the clarity is tremendous. So, and then there's also the emotional release that comes with that. So when we go through trauma, we go through experiences in our life, we store that emotion in our body. Now, there's something very nice about sitting in your therapist's office and shedding a tear and saying, okay, I finally got some tears out. Is something super powerful when you contact a trauma, when you contact that little girl, that little boy that was once really, really hurt, and that child gets to really cry it out in a way that was so necessary back then, but wasn't possible. And now, in the safety of the office with their therapist, they get to really express that and be held and contained and supported. And the process is just so powerful and so healing. People get clarity like they've never gotten before. And it goes to a lot of very deep levels. So when I talk about this, I like to kind of differentiate it in different, I want to do two things, two separate things. First, I want to explain to you as a therapist, right, the difference between breathing and breath work, right? Because in the training, I train you how to do a full breath work session with your clients. But I also teach you, unlike most of the other places, that not everyone should be doing a breathwork session. A breathwork session is a very powerful intervention. It's like open heart surgery. You're going in there with the client, and you need to be prepared that they might go really deep, and then and that information might come up that is super powerful. And I'll share with you in a minute what I mean about that. And then what I teach you is that the integration and working through that afterwards is what's most important because you're going to get a lot if you do this right. And the way I developed this training so that it should be professional, ethical, clinical, and therapeutic and safe, which is very specific, a specific modality, and you walk out with like a clear format, your client's going to go deep. And that's what I hear a lot from people who've taken my breath work versus others. They'll come in and they'll say, that was so deep. I've never gone this deep before. I had one guy who came to a breathwork group and he said, I'm like a junkie when it comes to breathwork. I must have done it like 50 times, but I've never gone this deep because there is something very powerful and very deep in this method. And I'm sure that the therapists who've taken this training can talk about that. So there's this intervention that's very powerful. But this intervention shouldn't be done on a weekly basis. Unlike what many people will tell you, they say, oh, do breath work every day. Yeah, we breathe every day. But breath work is so powerful that if you're not using the information to integrate it into your life, then it's just a waste of a lot of energy and a lot of work because it's work. So what I teach as well in this 4-day training is the power of the breath. And I teach ways to bring mini breath works into your clinical session. Like I can do breath work with the client in a 45-minute session to deepen, to understand something, to get clarity on something. We also use breath as a fabulous grounding tool. I can ground someone with their breath in literally seconds because what we don't understand sometimes is like, I see therapists doing, I'm a somatic therapist and I really believe in somatic therapy. And I think that somatic therapy has so many incredible interventions to help clients ground in their body and feel into their body and all that stuff. But if the client is not in their body, then we are just like keeping ourselves busy by doing all these interventions with them. If the client is not in the room and all you got there is their body and their spirit is not there, and I teach you how to identify that. How do you know that the client is not in the room? And I say this to my clients all the time. I say, welcome, especially now after the holidays, people come back and they're so exhausted. They're so drained from all the time that they were, and some of them were out of therapy for a couple of weeks. And they walk into the room and they sit themselves in the chair. And I'm like, welcome. And they're there. Their bodies walked into the room, but they're not there. And I'll look at them and I'll say, it's good to see you. And you're not here. So, through techniques that I teach, we use the breath to bring them back in, literally in seconds, minutes, like bam, they drop back in. Because here's the thing, you can't breathe, you can't be conscious of your breath and be dissociated at the same time. It's a contradiction. So when we are conscious of our breath, when we connect clients with their breath, they will automatically drop inside. Some of them won't want to go there because it's so frightening to be in their body. But then we know exactly where the work is because a client that's not breathing is a client that's not healing. All right. And you can put my name on that. A client that's not breathing is a client that's not healing. We're going to be going around in circles forever and ever and ever. And it's not going in. We're not bringing it inside. So that's the power of the breath. So a lot of this training is not just breath work. A lot of this training is ways to bring the breath into the session in a clinical session. In a 45-minute session, how can you use the breath to really help your clients? And what I hear from people and what I see for myself also is that any modality that you're trained in, anything you do, you bring the breath into that and you take that modality and you put it on steroids. It's powerful. People who've trained in EMDR and somatic therapy and CBT therapy and anything, any kind of therapy you do, connect this breath to it, and you're going to see that everything moves deeper, faster, smoother. Clients
So
start
when you say
moving
connect the breath, what do you mean by that?
you like by utilizing the process of breathing into it. Now, I can't just break it down in 5 seconds, but that's basically called breath awareness. We call contacting the breath, breath meditations, mini breathwork sessions. There are so many different things that I teach around this, not just like, oh, box breathing, all the stuff that we talk about. That's also great. We bring that in as well. But I give you actual technique. The therapists I've trained, they all have their little speakers in their office now. We have the music at our fingertips. Music comes in. Music is such a powerful tool. And that's another thing I give you at the training is you walk away with, all the music playlists. I have hours and hours and hours of collection of beautiful medicine music and healing music. We also have a wonderful WhatsApp chat with all the breathwork trainees on it. Everybody who's a breathwork facilitator, all the therapists are on it. We support each other. We've created this beautiful community of incredible humans, incredible people. I'm just so humbled every time. We have 5 running breathwork closed groups for therapists every month. Every month we have these groups coming in and they do their own breathwork and their own supervision around it. And if I may say so myself, I think they're amazing. Every time I walk away and I'm just
So tell
so
me, I'm
moved.
wondering, is there anybody here who's trained in breath work under Gitty who'd like to share their experience and give us an idea of what it's like from a trainee's perspective? Feel free to raise your hand by clicking the React tab on the bottom of the screen if you'd like to share. Click the React tab, click raise your hand, and we'll call on you. All right, Mimi, let's hear. And thanks for joining. I don't know if you've ever been here before.
Hello, it's nice to be here. What Gitty could do, huh? Okay, so I've been trying different breath work workshops, and I was very hesitant before coming to train by Gitty because it was far trip from Lakewood to Brooklyn. It sounded like a big deal, and I didn't understand how it could be different than anything I've tried already. Okay, breathwork is breathwork. What could she have that's any different? And I came in very, very skeptical. Um, Kind of like if you don't prove to me, your backing, why would I trust anything you say? And I think the most significant piece was the clinical piece of bringing that component. It's not, in Hebrew we say achi fachi, right? It's not achi-fachi, random, do this, do that, random. Everything is so thoroughly explained to create a client that's very calm, right? So when everything is clearly laid out in a clinical way, and we understand what to expect in a clinical way and how it makes sense with a nerve system or the body or what the body's trying to do, we feel much safer. And when we feel safer, magic does happen because it's so different than just doing random things that we don't get and we don't understand, and it doesn't allow us to go
So
anywhere.
can you share a little bit about what your personal experience from the breathwork was when Gitty talks about transformative and open and these words? Can you share what that was like for you?
So for me, the psychoeducation part was making all the difference.
Mhm.
I knew what to expect. I knew why. I knew that if my body has a certain reaction, instead of freaking out, I could just breathe and allow and go with it, which opened all the gates. Everything was happening because I was not scared. And that's all I needed. I never, there were so many blocks that I always had, and I thought, okay, that's as far as it could go. So for me, that was a huge game changer, and I was able to have very significant breakthroughs, real breakthroughs
So
in my.
okay, so tell me about breakthroughs. What does that mean?
So that meant that I was able to apply breath work to my real life dilemmas and question marks and get amazing clarity in session. So much so that, 5 minutes into breath work, I'm like, I know what to do with this client. The client I felt so stuck with, and my supervisor told me she doesn't know what to do. I know what to do. I need to set that boundary right now. And I just wanted to get up and send
So you're
this
saying
text.
it sort of unlocks blockages that really somewhere inside of you you know, but you can't access them because of whatever anxieties or whatever reasons.
I don't know if you could call it different names. You could say I had the clarity. You could say it was divinely sent in the,
Mhm.
I connected to my neshama. You could call it all sort
Mhm.
of names. And I really honestly don't care what you call it. It just was fabulous to have it.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Yankee, did you want to share? Are you still here? And did you want to unmute and share?
Yeah, I'm here. I just by the way, it's very good to be here. Thank you much for having this every week. It's really amazing. Do you have any specific questions that you want to ask me? Like, I don't want to repeat what Mimi said before. Any specific questions? Otherwise, I can just share whatever comes up. But
Well, again, I'm curious to hear more about the experience, the psychedelic or the transformative experience, accessing things and what that means to you.
I understand. Um, I'll be very like down to earth about it. I really feel about it like that there's two sides to it. Number one, there's the full-fledged 2 hour breathwork session that is very deep, and I can share about it in a minute. And then we have also, as Gitty said before, the breath awareness that comes in handy literally after in every single session. I'm sure like probably everyone here could relate to the fact when a client comes in, sounds very grounded. You ask him like, "What's on his mind today?" And nothing, all good, everything fine. And that I think it used to put me in a place where like I was very stuck. Okay, so I was quiet, he was quiet, and then I had this feeling maybe I need to just create a conversation. I can say that after this training, I was able to just, hey, I'm noticing, let's say your breath, like how are you feeling in your body right now? I just wonder if we can take 10 seconds with deep inhales and exhales. And that works wonders. All of a sudden, I would hear the client, this came up and this came, not by doing breath work. Breath work is a nuke option. In terms of going in deep, I can say that personally, what I do, I see couples a lot. And whenever I've had couples coming in and doing it, and it was a remarkable experience. After every single time, I never had such a thing that an individual client or a couple coming back after the experience and say that was horrendous. No, after every single time, there was something happening. For example, this week I've had a couple that after the session, the wife shared that it was the first time that I really wanted my husband next to me. And I was so happy to see him next to me when I like after I came up, and I really see the good things that come up from it. And I don't want to take up the entire time here. But these kinds of situations where clients, like sometimes nothing needs to happen for the client outwardly, and Gitty stresses about it a lot in their trainings, that we're not here to make the client scream, cry, yell, just shake and move around. It's only about giving the client the ability to trust their body, to to feel safe in their own space and really feel that whatever happens today in session and like in their breathwork session is supposed to happen. She stresses a lot about this idea that we don't need to give our clients to have like super expectations that they're going to realize that they're a Mashiach or something like that. They're just human beings going through. Everyone has a tough time, and sometimes they're gonna they're gonna come back after the session. Coming back, I mean, probably Gita is gonna stress about it as well, but it's not the client is really always there in session. They're not like in the psychedelics or ketamine where they're not participating. They're always there. They're always in control. Whenever if they don't feel safe, all they gotta do is to breathe regularly to stop the act of breathing, and they're back, which makes it very safe. And the cli-
Okay.
and
Okay,
the
Yankee,
safety was, yeah.
I
I can
want
talk
to
and
get
talk. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, because I want Gitty. This is Gitty's show. I want her to be able to talk about it. I was
Oh,
just asking about your own
I'm sorry.
personal
So
personal
that's
experience of it.
basically, if you
Okay,
have
so
any other question, I'll do it. But
so let me jump back.
basically,
Let me jump
yeah,
back to Gitty then. Okay, so Gitty, tell
sure.
us a little bit about a breathwork session. What does it look like? What does it do? And what happens?
Okay, so I'll do that. And I think that before I do that, what I'm hearing you ask over and over again is give me an example of how breath work was transformative for you. Is that
Mhm.
what you're asking over and over again?
Well, sort of, not just how it was transformative for you, but what was it when you say words like clarity and transformation? What does that specifically allude to? Does it mean
Right.
that a person, let's say with anxiety, felt suddenly calmer, or with a person with depression suddenly felt more motivated? What does it mean when we talk about transformative? Yes.
Yeah. So the question I would ask you is, what would make someone with anxiety suddenly have less anxiety? What would make someone with depression suddenly feel more motivated? What's the process? As therapists, how do we get our clients to that place? Right?
Hmm.
So So, as a therapist, what do we do? And what have I done for many years before I found breathwork? I tried to help them understand the core of their problem. Where is this problem coming from? What's really going on? And when we uproot whatever it is, this is like deep trauma work. This is deep analysis. This is deep understanding of what's really going on for you. Now, most of our clients, and I know for myself, when I was going through my process, it was very difficult for me to go into spaces that I've repressed and hidden and stored away for many, many years. And my life was difficult. I was going through, I've had my own personal experience with a lot of trauma, and I was trying to move through my life, and it was tedious. It was just doing another layer and another layer and another layer. And at some points, I felt like I just needed to accept what it was. And I'll give you an example, okay? A personal example. I can't talk about clients because I have no, consent for that, but I can talk about myself, right? So let me give you an example. So there are different levels of where breath work can take you. Breath work is not only so that you can have a psychedelic experience. Breath work is also a beautiful somatic integration tool and processing tool. So we use breath work as a stress relief. So if I'm going through a lot of stress in my life and I have a lot on my mind and my body starts to, act up, there's this very interesting line that I heard from what's his name again? Uh, Joe Dispenza. So Joe Dispenza says, he said, the thoughts is the language of the mind, and emotions is the language of the body. So when we go through a lot of emotional stuff in our life and it's overwhelming, it gets stored in the body and we start reacting to that because we start not feeling well. We start having different kind of illnesses and different kind of things that happen. That's where the whole psychosomatic piece comes from, right? So when I'm under a lot of stress, I might use breath work to release that stress, right? So even for myself, now it was a very, very difficult holiday season. I was exhausted. I got myself on my mat and I did a breathwork session. I had a good cry, I had a good release, and there was no serious content other than I needed to release the tension from my body. And this is a beautiful, powerful way to do that without much therapy, without much talking, without anything. Okay, that's one way to use this. So when a client comes in and they're under a lot of stress and tension, I might say to them, let's use this process to help you release some of the tension in the body. If someone is going through acute trauma and the trauma is ongoing and there's nothing they can do about it, ill parent and they're busy caretaking a child that's not well, something that's happening in their life that they can't really change, but is taking a lot of space inside. I might use breath work to help them relieve some of the stress so they can face another day, right? I might use it to just empty out their system a little. That's one way. Then we have breath work that takes you into like a hypnotic trance, which is like a regression therapy. I have a problem. There's something I'm struggling with. I'm having a really hard time in my life. I need to understand the core of this. I need to release it. Breathwork can take you into childhood. It helps you remember things that happened that you would never be able to bring up into your conscious mind otherwise. Maybe in little bits and pieces, but not enough. And literally in one breathwork session, you can take a client deep into childhood states, deep into and access a trauma that happened, bring it to a place of processing, integration, and completion. And I'll give you an example personally about something like that for me. Okay. But before I give you the example, I want to tell you something else. Sometimes, and I'm a very big believer, and again, that's a lot of my training is in that, in understanding that in order for someone to really have relief from their pain, from their trauma, from their difficulties in their life, we need to get to the root of what happened. So many of us in the medical world out there is very much, focused on that. We work on symptom control instead of the problem. So we're busy treating headaches with Tylenol instead of understanding where the headache is coming from. We're busy treating people with a lot of different kind of modalities, but we're not really getting to the root of the problem. And to really find relief from a problem, we need to find the core of it, the root of it. And interestingly enough, sometimes the root can be deep in childhood. Sometimes the root can be as a baby. Sometimes the root can be in utero. And sometimes the root can literally throw you into a past life memory. And that's what's so fascinating that sometimes, and that's where people talk about the psychedelic part of it, that breath work can sometimes take you to places that are so deep and take you into a place of such higher consciousness where you get connection to your soul and to your story of your soul that it's just profound. So now on that level, I'm going to share with you a little bit of that. So the stress part, you got, right? Let's talk about for a moment, for example, with myself. For many, many years, I struggled with a certain OCD component. You might want to call it OCD, but it wasn't really OCD. What it was that I had this tremendous fear that someone was going to come out of nowhere and surprise me. So for many, many years, as a student in college, in graduate school, I couldn't sit anywhere in the classroom besides for the back. I always needed the back seat against the wall. I'd go to a restaurant and I would only sit in a chair if I'm facing the whole place. Like I couldn't sit with my back. My husband would be like, I don't understand, you're here with me. I'm like, I know I'm here with you. I just need a scan. I would walk into a room, I would come home from work, and I would check all the closets to make sure no one's hiding. And it was ridiculous. I was really way too smart for that. I was way too evolved to have such a ridiculous fear. But everything I did, nothing helped. I just accepted it. That's it. And I said, all right, that's me. I was like, had this like line. I said, I need to check the closets. Sue me. That's it. I'm just going to do it. And I stopped even judging myself for it. So there I was. And after I learned about breathwork, I went into a breathwork session with the intention of understanding what's up with this. Like really, seriously. And it was such a fear that I couldn't do anything about it. And sure enough, I went into the breathwork session. And I mean, I have chills even as I'm thinking about it. And as I'm going back in time, and again, my mind shuts off. I go into this beautiful hypnotic trance we call the theta state, which is very deep. It's like that deepest state of like right before we fall asleep. And suddenly, like a dream, I start remembering. And I remember myself being probably like 5 or 6 years old, playing in my backyard. I lived upstate and we had this beautiful backyard. And out of nowhere, I was attacked. And someone came at me and attacked me. And I saw the whole thing. I mean, I don't want to go into details because I don't want to, share in this way, but I was able to see the whole story. It was clear as day. I had like this full visual and I was blown away. And my body started sequencing and shaking and all this trauma that my body was releasing in that session. Now, I understand sequencing and I teach this in the training as well, different ways the body will release trauma when when we finally have access to it. And it was such a profound session for me that I then was able to conceptualize it. And I was like, oh, it was a one-time incident. My entire life is not dangerous. No one's coming at me. It happened to me once when I was a child. But you know what? I never had to work that OCD again. It was gone, gone, just like that, because I got to the core of it and I was able to work it and process and integrate that, right? So that's an example of what I mean by really deep and transformative healing. That was like 100 sessions of therapy and EMDR and it's somatic therapy, all in a 2-hour process, just like that. So that would be one example, right? Now, if that's not enough for you, I can give you another example, or we can stop here and we can go to the next question that you wanted to ask.
Well, I wanted to hear from Shalamis because she had her hand raised before.
Sure, sure.
Shalamis, would you share? And if anybody, of course, has any questions, please feel free to hit the React tab on the bottom, raise your hand, and ask.
Mhm.
Okay, so I journeyed with Gitty now to her the next what her topic that she was talking about now. You want me to share what I was previously going to share?
If you still
Okay.
to
So
share.
I think the question was like how we bring this into our room with the people we work with. Was that like how it becomes a transformative experience, not just for us individually, but how we bring it into the room? And
Okay.
is that
I mean, the
something?
question that I had asked was did you find it to be transformative when you took the training, and what does transformation mean or
Okay,
clarity mean?
fine. So to me, right away, never mind for me personally, it was being able to connect and go deeper with all the other trainings that we have previously taken with with my clients. That's what it was like for me. So that means if I took brain spotting, I was able to deepen into the modality with the breath. If it was just working with a sensory motor model,
Mhm.
and I needed an image or a memory came up, and we had to implement an experiment because that's what was warranted. It was deeper with the breath. Never mind the attachment and the relationship, and connecting energetically through the breath and making sense of when you're working with the person, all of a sudden, their nervous system that is just like literally not breathing, but saying all the right things and doing, you see them just like somehow stay very connected to their mind and their body through the breath. And Gitty really has walked us through experientially through all the different ways we can use this when we're working with people. So everything that we knew through I don't know how many trainings we've all taken, most of us clinicians that participated, everything went deeper and faster, and
Mhm.
things made sense, and we weren't working so hard, and our brains just like got a rest of thinking.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what it was like for me.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much for sharing. I want to ask you something, Gitty. I have a client who gets so anxious during sessions that she cannot breathe. If I prompt her to breathe, she gets stuck. And, I've seen many clients not be able to breathe and we're able to work them through. But with this particular person, the breath is so caught that it's almost impossible for her to breathe. How would you help her to breathe?
That's a great question. I love this question because 99% of our clients, and I'm just giving myself that 1% leeway just to be safe, but I would almost say 100%. People who have anxiety are usually not breathing. And that's what creates the anxiety even more. If you think
Mhm.
about when we get scared, what is the breath of fear? The breath of fear is, and that's where it stays, right? Now, when we hold that breath of fear in our bodies and we don't release it and bring the body back to balanced breathing, the body is stuck in a hyper aroused state. The body is stuck in a fear response. And the message that goes to the brain over and over and over again is danger, 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 danger. And the body can't calm down. So as soon as someone tells me they have panic, fear, anxieties, all that stuff, I know they're not breathing, right? Now, psychoeducation first, we explain this to them. And then there are ways that we can help them come back into their breath without telling them to breathe. If you would look at me when I'm really anxious and say, I need you to breathe right now, breathe, breathe, you're going to make me more anxious. Two reasons. A, because I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't even have a relationship with my breath yet. So I don't even know what you want from me because I don't realize that I'm not breathing. Look, I'm alive, so I must be breathing, right? But they don't realize that they're chest breathing and they're not bringing any oxygen in. Okay, that's number one. The second reason why it won't help if you tell someone to just breathe, right? Is because for most people who are traumatized, who've had difficult lives, difficult childhoods, are in a lot of stress, breathing is a trigger. Breathing means you're going to come back into your body and be inside. And for them, their bodies are scary places to live. Now, very gently, and again, I teach this in a very, very systematic way. Very, very gently, we help them come back inside. We help them drop into their bodies again. And from there, any trauma healing that you do, it works. It just works because the client is in the room with you. The client is present.
So
We
how
can
do we help
talk.
them bring themselves back into their body?
So again, this is something that I don't want to just say it here because then it gets used in the wrong context. This is something I teach. And this is something that gets practiced, it gets reviewed. We do it again and again in supervision, and it really works. I don't want to just throw modalities out because that's unsafe. And from a clinical perspective, I don't want to put it out there. I'll give the reason why, because I once did such a kind of a thing and I shared different modalities, and then someone emailed me and she says, "Okay, so from the training that I took online for 45 minutes, I want to use this with my client." I'm like, "Ooh, no."
Understood.
Because yeah, so I don't want it to be just something that we do, but I will tell you that there are beautiful, meaningful, gentle ways to get the client back inside, and they really work.
Okay.
They really work.
Let's take
Yeah.
a question or comment from Rifki. Go ahead.
Hi, Moshe. How are you? Do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you again for this amazing platform. You are always bringing the latest and the newest, so I'm very excited to be here. I actually met Gitty at one of the EMDR trainings that we were doing, and I spotted her right then and there as a very well-informed clinician. And um, I agree with what a lot of people are saying, and I feel that even I do want to make one point. I mean, one of the way we met with Gitty, besides for the EMDR training, was that I was looking into psychedelics and all the different things that, people are speaking about it, and MAP is going to be training, once a lot of things are more legalized, and I've been looking at things that are and what aren't. And I know that as a board member of Nefesh, I wanted to look into breath work and see what's happening. And I actually had a private session with Gitty to see if I could convince Nefesh to bring Gitty in to present on breath work. And for me, what I found was really wonderful. I do a lot of breath awareness with my clients. I do EMDR intensives. I know that I can never get to the client if I don't connect their breath. So I've been doing that, all along in my practice, and definitely I'll find clients are coming in and they're rushing and they're speaking, they want to just get everything out. And I say, okay, I want to hear everything you have to say, but let's just touch into our breath. And I teach every client how to breathe. But I think what I found really special about Gitty's training was that I experienced it on my own, and I took the training as well, was that it did, like psychedelics takes a lot of inhibitions away, and it can definitely give you greater insight, and you come to a place of understanding. And then if you work with a therapist after that, see, a lot of clients and a lot of people fear imagining what life would be without them doing the things they're doing. And once they can, like, almost like taste the ice cream, then they know what it tastes like. And sometimes the psychedelics will do that. It lets you experience what a friendship is, or what love is, or what trust is. And I think, for the active breath, I think it had a way of manifesting the breath that you can get to a certain place without drugs. And for me, that was really, mind opening, and I really appreciated that experience. And personally, it helped me with some of the things that I was experiencing, and I really appreciated that kind of work. And I think Gitty is a professional par excellence in the way she trains and teaches us. So I think, I've trained in so many modalities, IFS, somatic, EMDR, and I've trained people as well. If you're not going to take to the breath work, it's going to be like anything else. But I think just being very informed with different updated methodology, it can really enhance the things that you're doing. You can't forget, the skills as a clinician. And the breath work will enhance that. EMDR intensive enhances that. But I love interweaving different things. But I think most importantly, I think a lot of clinicians don't know the importance of breath awareness. So if you get to take the breathwork course and you learn about breath awareness and implement that, you really get places very quick. So
Okay,
that was
thank
my
you for that.
experience.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there's anyone who has any questions or comments that they'd like to ask before we continue. Kaya, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much, Gitty and Maishi. So I had two different questions, but I'm going to start with one, and if you have time at the end, you'll let me know. So I know you mentioned Gitty at the beginning about like it's not for everyone, the breath work, and it's also about like what happens after. It's not just in the moment. So I guess it might be two questions in one. I kind of wanted to know like how we know as a therapist, like if a client is ready for it. And also, I was just curious, like what's the quote unquote, I guess, damage if it's done prematurely? Like what, like if they do a session and it wasn't good, like are they just like completely like out of it? Like how does that look?
Okay, love that question. So I'm going to start by saying this, that breathwork is like psychedelics without psychedelics. Okay, it could be possibly. It could naturally take you to very deep and powerful places, right? So let's use my story. Okay? If I wasn't resourced if I didn't have a good therapist to work with, if I didn't have where to take this memory to, if I wasn't prepared to meet this memory in a safe, contained way, it might have re-traumatized me, right? And that's where I find that people who do breath work, I have tremendous respect for all the breathwork facilitators out there. And I think we need more people healing people. It's all wonderful. However, the part that many people are missing is that our traumatized clients need to work with licensed professionals that know what they're doing. Because most of the damage that I found that came to me, and I get calls all the time of clients calling me. Somebody gave me your number. I should talk to you about the fact that they had a memory and something came up and they're destroyed from breath work. And each and every time I spend some time with them on the phone and I talk to them, it's always because the facilitator did not prepare them for the experience that was to come. And they weren't there to help them integrate and process it. And it's such a shame because they got tremendous healing, but the client herself didn't even know that she was getting healing from this. So we talk a lot about preparing the client, about recognizing when a client is ready for this process. We talk about how to prepare a client for it. There are so many beautiful ways to get a client to the point where they can do a full breathwork session. And sometimes it takes time. And sometimes the client can do what we call a mini breathwork session that takes them deep enough, but not as psychedelically deep as a full breathwork session. This is what the training is all about, like about being a professional in the room, about recognizing trauma when you see it, about learning to read the body, about knowing how to gauge yourself so that the client gets their powerful experience. And also, I teach it very, very somatically and very, very systematically. If you follow my system that I developed, you're going to go in and you're going to have a beautiful session. It's going to come full circle. It's about taking the client in and then bringing them back to baseline. So all that is very much integrated. Now, there are certain medical conditions that are contraindications to breath work. And we learn about those as well. Like someone who has a heart condition, someone who's pregnant, someone who has asthma, someone who has a history of aneurysms. Now, and there are more, but we really talk a lot about them, that those are things that we need to be careful about. So if you know what to watch out for, you know what you're doing. We talk about all the different things that come up during breath work and how to facilitate that, how to help the client through it. Right. So these are ways that, I'll give you an example. At my breathwork training, I remember sitting there and it was after a very deep process. And one of the women, when we were like talking afterwards, one of the women, right after the session, she raised her hand and she told the trainer, she said, I'm not feeling well. I'm not feeling well. I feel like I'm having a seizure. I'm having a seizure. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And she really looked like she wasn't okay. And he was like, you're fine. You're fine. Just give it some time. And she's like, I'm not fine. My whole body's shaking. I'm having a seizure. I'm having a seizure. And he's like, you're going to be okay. Just give it a couple of minutes. You'll be fine. And he continues lecturing. And I'm watching this woman and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going into a full-blown panic attack. Right. And she's like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And he's like, I need you to sit quietly. You're doing fine. And at that moment, I said, I'm not going to stay quiet anymore. And I said, I looked like I was watching this poor woman. Now, I'm a somatic therapist. I read the body. And what I'm seeing over there is that this woman is sequencing. She released a lot of trauma and her body was shaking it out. And that's actually wonderful. That's so healing. But she didn't know that she was experiencing that and she thought she's having a seizure. So she was going into full-blown panic. Now, what would happen to this woman if she walked out of that room that night without information? Because no one understands her. So I just, took the liberty and I said, can I please help her? And I looked at her and I said, what you're experiencing right now is called sequencing. It's a beautiful somatic response. Your body's releasing trauma. Just stay with it. You're safe. I'm right here with you. That's all I said to her. And she says, that's what it feels like. I said, yeah, it's wonderful. Stay right there. And I stayed with her while she processed that sequencing. And then she felt better. And she hugged me and she thanked me and she said, "Oh my gosh." And I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, imagine if she walked out without this interaction, she would be traumatized." This is what I mean when I say that some people, that it can cause damage. Really, it shouldn't cause any damage. If you're doing this right, the breath is the beautiful medicine. It's a God-given medicine. It's sacred, it's divine, it's the language of the soul. It's the first thing you did the moment you came into this world. You took a deep breath. It's the last thing you're going to do when your soul departs. The breath is what keeps our soul anchored to our body. The breath is beautiful, it's powerful, it's meaningful, and it's very healing. But when it's done right, it's this way. When it's not done in a way where the client is very much involved and informed, and the therapist knows what she's looking at, then that's when we bring our clients into dangerous places. So it's a great question. I love it, and yeah, absolutely. And this is why I developed this training, and this is why I don't stop developing it again and again. Just really bringing clear clinical information that's concrete, that nobody walks away saying, "What's happening?" You know what's happening because I'm going to tell you everything. You're going to know what's happening and you'll feel very confident because when we know, when we have information, then we can do what we need to do in a way that's grounded, safe, embodied, and very, very healing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, Gitty, you had brought up a second example that you were going to talk about how it was transformative for you.
So I've had many, but I'm going to talk about the second level of it, right? So this was a different experience I had where this was profound. Now, I don't love sharing these kind of examples because then people have that kind of expectations, but it definitely is possible. And many of my clients and many of the clients, I run groups all the time. So I run groups for other therapist clients as well. And many of the therapists who've taken the training have been reporting these kind of experiences as well. So I feel very comfortable sharing that. So this is very interesting how after I got married and I started having my children, I had an interesting anxiety where I could not leave my children. No matter what happened, I was always afraid of leaving my children. And it was ridiculous because I couldn't go on vacation unless they came with me. And I always had good excuses. I was smart. I'm a very smart person, if I can say so myself. So I had good reason. And my siblings, my sisters, they would say, let's go to Florida. And I'm like, no, I can't. And it got even worse when I became educated. I went to college. I learned about attachment therapy because then I had a smart reason. So I even came across as this like amazing mother who's very attached to her children and I don't want to leave them. And it was ridiculous. Fast forward, I want to go to this training in Mexico. For crying out loud, I really want to go to this training, but it's causing so much anxiety for me because I don't know how I'm going to do this. So that was part of what was so transformative for me at that breathwork session in Mexico because I got myself to go, but I was very anxious the whole time. It was very, very difficult for me. And I set an intention to understand it. And it's going to sound crazy, but as I'm breathing there, I suddenly see a woman come into my line of vision. I just knew she's my grandmother, my great grandmother, but I've never met her, right? So I just knew it was her. And this whole memory is like interesting, like her story came forward to talk about generational trauma and epigenetics. It was this, I'll fast forward, right? I'll fast forward. My grandmother, my great grandmother, she died very young. And my grandfather was an orphan. He was an orphan at 6 or 7 years old. And she died from blood poisoning way back then before they had antibiotics to treat it. And this has been like a family story, but I've never really, when I came home and I did some research on it, because I found myself crying tears that weren't mine. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm bawling, I'm crying these bitter tears of grief of the grief of a mother who's left her child behind. And it made no sense because I never left my kids, remember? There was no grief in my life around that. Nobody left me either. And when I came home, I started asking a lot of questions because I was from like my older siblings remembered a lot more. So I called my oldest brother and I said, you know, what's the story? And he's like, you don't know? And I'm like, no. And he tells me that, my grandfather would always tell the story. Now, my grandfather died when I was a child, so I didn't really have the opportunity to learn the story. But he would always tell the story that he was a young child and his mother called him over and she knew she was dying. She was very sick. And his mother called him over and said to him, come here, I want to give you a hug. And he was this little boy and he said, no. And he ran away. And he always said that that was the last time I saw her. I should have taken that hug. And to think about my grandfather passing this down to my father, who then passed this anxiety down to me, it was such a profound learning for me. I was able to access this generational trauma that was coming down my family line. And again, so it was so fascinating because I was able to work through it. 3 months later, I was in Colorado. My children were taking my anxiety as well. If mommy can't leave us, then we probably shouldn't be left, right? I went to, and I went to this Colorado thing. Can you imagine 3 months later? And while I was there, I remember exactly where I was. And I was talking to my daughter who was home. And, my kids couldn't leave me for 30 seconds. And I went for a simcha that was crazy. And my teenage daughter says to me, Ma, it's so interesting. I'm like, what's so interesting? She's like, I think this is the first time that you're not with me and I'm not anxious. I'm like, huh, you know, I cleared out that generational stuff, and again, this information came to me through breathwork. So we're talking about very deep stuff that we can have access to if we allow ourselves to go into these beautiful psychedelic states, which can happen. But again, this is not our goal. I want to make it very clear. Our goal is not to take our clients to psychedelic states. Our goal is not to take our clients to crazy emotional states. Our goal is to get our clients to a place where they can go into their own body and heal and work through stuff that is very hard to access otherwise. And I've used this in many ways like that are simpler. For example, the client who came in with delayed grief, lost her mother as a child, came in as an adult, tremendous anxiety, tremendous depression, very difficult. And she can't access it. She couldn't access any of it. She couldn't talk about her mother. She couldn't talk about anything, right? We used a breathwork session and bam, she opened up and we had months of material to work with. Or sometimes our clients who can't speak, for a client who cannot speak in session, who has a hard time communicating, breathwork takes them to these beautiful places without words. Anything that needs to be deepened, anything that needs to be understood. Breathwork is just a beautiful way to help clients go to places that are very difficult to access otherwise. And I stress this a lot. Anyone who takes my training will go through the experience for themselves as well. Because we should never take a client into a breathwork session if we can't take ourselves through the process first. We need to understand what's happening, but it's beautiful, it's safe, it's healing. It's just wonderful. It's just wonderful. So yeah,
Okay,
that was my other
beautiful.
story.
I know
Yeah.
there's a training coming up. Do you want to just tell us about when it's taking place and where for those who are interested? And what would be a good a website or contact information if somebody has more interest?
Okay, so thanks for asking that question. So at this point, I'm only training. I do separate cohorts for male and female therapists just because of the way it creates such deep connection and intimacy. I think it's safer that way. So we do separate trainings for female cohort and male cohort. The female cohort is actually coming up now in November, and November 16 is the female cohort. There's still some space in that training. We do close it because we try to keep it very safe and very contained and very intimate. So I don't let it get too big. At this point, there's still space in that training. And the male cohort is in February. And then this is the level 1 training. And then we move into the level 2. This summer, we did the level 2 training where once you get experience and once you really get a sense of it working with the individuals, we train in couples and groups, and then we really deepen into it even more. Um, Yeah, so that's kind of, and
If
I
someone
went on
wants more, if someone wants to reach out
information.
or
Yeah, so they can email me at ggreenwald, LCSW at gmail.com. That's once again, that's Greenwald, LCSW at gmail.com. It's a 4-day training, which is also very beautiful because when I was looking for a training, I did a lot of research. Now, I'm a therapist who's been through so much school education and schooling and trainings that I needed something that was going to give me the information I need quickly because I didn't need someone to start training me in somatics. I didn't need someone to start training me in what trauma is. I didn't need someone, we have that already. And I couldn't find that. So what ends up happening is that the trainings out there, the ones who that are worthwhile, are extremely costly and extremely time. It takes a lot of your time. So you have to take weeks off from work and you have to train over the whole course of a year. And it ends up costing A, a lot of money, and B, a lot of time off from work, which I didn't have. Right. So I ended up taking the training that I took, which was shorter, but it didn't give me enough. So what I was able to do for this training is A, put in everything I wanted to learn, I teach you. Everything I wish someone told me, I bring in for you. And I want you to have everything I've learned. So I bring literally, I would say, uh, maybe $100,000 worth of personal training over the years into this breathwork training. And I give it all to you in this beautiful, neat little package that's workable and practical, right? I tried keeping it low. I know it sounds like a lot when you look at the number. It says, oh my gosh, this training is $3,000. Doesn't make any sense. But really, this training, if you go out there and do some research, it runs anywhere between, but sometimes you can get it for 5, and that means you have to travel and pay the hotel and whatnot. But these trainings run between $7,500 to $17,000 because breathwork trainings, they charge a lot for it. So I tried keeping it low so that we can do this in a way that's practical. You walk away with everything you need and more, whatever you need.
okay,
Consent
amazing.
forms.
Is there
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there someone's asking if there's a website?
So,
I'm gonna send out all the information in the email tomorrow
yeah.
with
So, okay.
Breathwork.
So I'm actually in the process of developing my website. Like I've told you before, I wasn't planning to be a trainer, so I'm catching up with myself.
Okay.
I'm really just a fellow therapist sharing.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Chaya, Gitty Greenwald, thank you very, very much for this informative training. It sounds fascinating. This something that I definitely want to learn more about and experience myself. Um, if I'm not mistaken, you also have a list of breathwork trainers in some of the areas. Is that right?
Yes, we
So
have a directory.
if somebody actually wants to experience breath work, you could reach out to me. You could reach out to Gitty and get that information and maybe have a couple of breathwork sessions. Any last comments or last thoughts? You've said it all. It's transformative. It's beautiful. It's vulnerable. It's healing.
It's real. It's so real, Moshe. It's so real. It's as real as it gets.
Okay. Well, thanks again for taking your time and sharing this with us. Have a good night,
Yes,
everybody.
thank you so much for having me. Take good care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
If anybody wants to say hello, if it's your first time here,